So I'm out here today kind of shed hunting slash scouting. What happened was in the winter, I got about 4,000 public acres that I generally hunt. And I didn't really know 2,000 of it, and it's a lot of swamp. But this winter, what I did was I just drove around all of it and multiple times in the evenings looking for deer. And what that allowed me to do was just kind of figure out where they are. And once you understand where they are, you're gonna be a lot more, you'll have a lot higher odds of success in finding sheds, because like the deer, you know, they shed where they are. So one of the things I did was find this field, and this field is pretty slick because it's pretty close to the road, and there were huge trails going through it, just giant trails. So now I'm out here in this field looking for sheds, combing over this ice stuff, but I'm also planning my hunting tactics for next season. So because it's close to the road, it's not a huge dirty swamp, and I'm assuming they're gonna plant soybeans here. I'm gonna be scouting this early, like fall, like in August. I'll just be parked on the road and I'll just be watching this in the evening for when deer come in and out of this field. And once I can figure that out, then I can plan my setup in terms of where do I wanna be, what wind do I wanna have, what trees do I wanna sit in, things like that. So then right away, early season, I can come out here and get me a doe or maybe even a buck. You know, I had a buddy last year do this exact same tactic on a public land field, shot a really nice 10-point. So I'm excited for that. I'm hopefully gonna find some sheds here in a little bit. But yeah, just going through this field, there are a couple major trails through here that I'm following and haven't found anything yet, but that's, you know, typical of my life story in shed hunting. But you know, we'll just keep putting on the miles, figure it out. If nothing else, it's a great day to just run the dogs. One of the big tips I have, the reason I'm out here in the morning is because all this stuff is still frozen yet. If it were mucky and warm and all this stuff was just like mud, this would be a huge pain to walk through. But because, you know, it's all frozen, it's nice and easy walking. So keep chugging away here. Maybe I'll find something. Who knows? So one of the things I always look for when I'm scouting these new pieces is trails, and right now with the snow melt and everything, it's kind of difficult to find those just because the trails are all gone because they're pretty much melted and it's all wiped clean. But what I do like to look for is like packed down ice, because that generally leads to a trail. So if you check this out right here, you got some packed down ice, you got some deer droppings here, and then you got packed down ice heading back into the woods. And as you look back further, a lot of this stuff here is it's clean, like there's no ice on it or anything, and then you got these one areas that have ice on it, and to me that says that this was packed down snow because it holds better. And now this is a trail that the deer use. So I'm just gonna mark this on my onX maps here, look at the trees, check them out, see if it's a decent spot to sit in the fall, and keep moving on. I might take this one a little bit back just to see what I could find, but it does seem like it's just a nice skating rink back there, like a lot of this. So we'll see, I don't know. So if you can see this trail kind of working its way right through here, this is just that packed down ice, and that's how I found this. A bunch of deer droppings here, just works its way right on back. Oh, it's a big pile. You hear that noise? That's the dogs breaking through the ice as they're coming through. So I'm seeing all these trails back in here, and I'm off the field. You can see the field right here. And then back here, it's just all thick nastiness. So this tells me that with these beds and how it's kind of, or with these trails and how it's kind of laid out, my assumption is that there's a road right over here and then a field. So this is a really thick cover area, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume that there is bedding areas within this thick nastiness here. So I'm gonna kind of wander around back in here, ducking and weaving through stuff. They might be back here. I doubt it with the dogs moving around. If they are here, they're already out. And then I'm just gonna kind of work my way through this bedding area, because it'll give me more insight as to where they are and where they most likely will come out. And then if I am here in the fall and I see them coming out of this patch, I know pretty much exactly where they're laying down, so then I can set up in a tree closest to this area or within range, you know, within 30 yards of it, and I might, hopefully will be able to get a shot. But just kind of having that understanding of where these deer are, and going in there now in the winter, in the spring, so that if you bump them or whatever, it's not that big of a deal, because they got 6 months to kind of calm down and refigure out their schedule. But going in there now and just really like knowing, I know that this deer came from like one of these 5 beds or right in this area. It got up and came right here, and I know the trail they're gonna take and how they got there. It's pretty satisfying when you do all this scouting and then you're able to have that happen. I had it play out a lot this year, or this last season, where I knew exactly where these deer were coming from, and I was able to set up on them. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a kill. Well, I could have killed plenty of them, but I didn't. I'm just saying, unfortunately, I didn't find that big buck that I was looking for. But at the same time, it's still pretty cool to have that in-depth knowledge. Man, this stuff is slippery. This is definitely a wintering ground for them. So much poop in here. All those little brown dots, just a ton of poop. Alright, starting to get into a little bit drier ground here. Found a nice little, somewhat of a rub, I guess. Not necessarily full on, but someone came through here and tried to scrape that up. So here is almost exactly what we're looking for. So if you look behind me here, you can see this bed, this like where the depression in the snow is and everything, how it's melted, how it's like oval-like, and how it's backed up against the tree right there. This is clearly a deer bed. So I'm definitely gonna mark this on, I run Onyx maps, but I'm gonna mark this and drop a pin here, because there's a trail that works its way right through here on the back side, on the front side, and then there's one right over here that leads right out to the field. So if I am to hunt this area, this stuff right here, you just can't hunt it. It's too thick. And on public land in Wisconsin, you're not allowed to trim any branches or anything. So there's just no way to really get in here unless you're on the ground and you're just, you know, your shot's gonna be at 10 feet. And that's not necessarily, like, that is super aggressive tactics, and I always start with the least aggressive tactics and work my way to being more aggressive. But understanding this, I can now go out and into the field here and know exactly kind of where I'm going to set up my stand if a deer is using this bedding area. And I can set trail cameras back here come August or July and see what's back here actually. But I do have a house that's only like, I don't know, 300 yards away, which is pretty cool, because that means that these deer are used to people. They understand like what dogs are, what human scent is and all that. So it makes me think that if I do have like a bad wind or something, I might still be able to hunt this area, just because they're used to human scent all the time with a house right next door. And they're using this because it is between a field, which is really good food source right here. There's a big swamp on the other side of that field. And then they got this real thick, nasty stuff. And I bet you this is probably one of those overlooked little honey holes that I talk about, where people just drive right by this. This is public, but it's such a small little chunk, this specific thick brush area, that people probably just go right by and go, I need to go a mile back, I need to keep going, because you can go on this piece, like you can go for like 4 or 5 miles. So I'm sure people are walking right past it, but all this sign here tells me I don't have to go very far on this piece specifically. So really cool to find that bed. That's awesome. Excited about that, and we'll just keep trucking. Hopefully I can find some more. To me, honestly, looking at this, like, it almost looks like a buck bed, to be honest. So I don't see any real, okay, so here's some tracks coming out of it right here, going this way, and these do look pretty big, but at the same time they are they're melted out from the snow melt, so they might not be that big, but definitely laying here, you know, just hanging out in here. One thing that really always marks a buck bed is a rub or a scrape really close by. That generally signifies like, yeah, this is my bed, stay out. But I don't see one there, so it makes me wonder. It could just be a big doe, but I am very interested in this spot now. All right, keep trucking. Look at that trail. That's a good trail right there. Just thinking about that bed that I just found. Another reason that I do think it's a buck bed is because it's solo, it's on its own. Does generally bed in groups. With as much poop as I'm seeing, the size of the poop, there's a lot of really small turds, which tells me that they're fawns and they're probably still with their mothers. So it's probably a doe group that's just all over here and just kind of lives in this area. But when you got 3, 4, 5, 6 does living together, they generally bed right next to each other, kind of in a circular pattern, and you'll find all these beds in one area. That was just a solo bed on its own, with backed up to some brush, which does don't always back up to brush. They just kind of lay. It seems like they just lay wherever they feel like stopping for the night. So, a couple things here. One, I never really set up on field edges on public land. I think that's kind of, I call them bait spots, areas where they look great and everything, but when you sit them, you're never gonna see anything because the deer just know. And pretty much every public land hunter that watches any sort of TV goes, oh, if I just sit on a field edge and a food source, like, I'm gonna kill big bucks. And that's just not the case. That's just like TV for you, and large pieces of private land. So what I do is I always set up at least like generally 20 to 50 yards off the field edge, because a lot of times deer will come, like they want to get up and they want to move around. Say it gets dark at 6 o'clock, they're going to get up at like 5:15, 5:30, and they're going to want to go to that field, but they're not going to get out into that field until 6:30, 7 o'clock. So what they're going to do is they come within, 20, 30, 40 yards, what people call staging areas, which was really hard to define for me. People kept saying staging areas, and that's generally what it is. It's deer that aren't in the field yet, and they're kind of just bopping around along the edges waiting for it to get dark so they feel safe coming out into that field. So you're always kind of looking for those staging areas off the food source, and you're gonna have a lot more success that way. So for me right now, this is a great staging area. There's great trails coming through here. You can kind of see it running behind me. I got a couple rubs on this tree right here, and then on these smaller trees behind me, I got this nice open field. I can see a few more rubs down there. So I can see a lot in here, and then I also have this like perfect tree right here. This is a great tree for me to set up in. It's got cover up high. I can get right up into that cover and I can just tuck away, and then I'll have wide open shots. Sorry if this is making you dizzy, but I'll have wide open shots all in here. That's one of the other big things on public land. When you're not allowed to trim, you got to find trees and spots that have natural shooting lanes, and this is a big piece for me. So I'm going to mark this tree down, and I'm going to set out a camera here in the fall right in this area, because I'm only 150 yards from that buck bed that I found. So setting out a camera here, seeing what's back here, going up here. There's a few more rubs over here. All right, I'll show you these rubs. Actually, I'll kind of cut it in. But anyway, yeah, no, I'm very excited about this spot right now. It just kind of makes me like giddy, like a little school kid. Yeah, I'm excited. I always love finding new spots. It's so much fun. All right, here is a few of the rubs right here. So here's one right here, and these aren't huge rubs by any means. But the big thing to understand about rubs is that, like, the size of the tree doesn't necessarily matter. It's typically the height of the tree or the height of the rub that matters most. Tall deer are big deer, short deer are small deer. You could have a little dink, like 6-point, working on a 10-inch round cedar tree for an hour or 30 minutes, or it could be a big buck that's only there for 5 minutes. I prefer to go by height rather than the width of the tree, for that reason, to understand if there are big deer in this area. So a lot of these rubs are pretty small, but it's kind of what I would expect, being so close to a food source. But at the same time, if the does are here, the big boys will be here at some point. It's just when. Whoa. Here's another spot that I found, which is awesome. I got some decent trails kind of running through here. Not sure how well you guys can see them, but I mean, this one's fairly obvious to me. And then I got a lot of openness, so a lot of natural shooting lanes. And then I got some great, I'm pretty sure these are not birch, what are they? Poplar trees is what they are. And I got a bunch of rubs all around here, small rubs all over the place in here. and got some great cover with these trees. So gonna mark this one up as well. This is a great spot in my opinion. I am now probably close to 100 yards off the field edge, which is great. I like being further from the food than closer. And then I also, you can kind of see these cedar trees in the background here. I know for a fact that there's beds under there. I scouted this a little bit, probably a month and a half ago, and there were beds right under those trees. So I know they're using this kind of as a bedding area. So now it just comes down to planting winds and understanding how they're using this area, and then picking out which trees to go into. So you'll notice that I'm in this kind of grassier field now, and I really like these areas with the grass and the brush and stuff more so than the swamp, because the swamp is tough to hunt in, but it provides great cover, great bedding areas, and people just generally stay out of there. So that's a great spot to like, almost like your public land sanctuary right there. And then these grassy areas, they're not a total, like, I mean, you look at this, it's not totally wide open or anything. There's enough cover that the deer feel safe walking through here, especially once all this stuff gets to be 3-4 feet tall. But it's not so much that I can't, as a hunter, see them by being in one of these trees. It's not enough to keep them hidden from me, but it's enough to keep them thinking that they're safe. So I really like these mixed areas. Because they will move in these areas more so, the odds are higher that they'll move in these areas during daylight shooting hours because they think they're safe. Oh, here's a cool looking rub right here. Deer came in here and mangled that thing up. I'll get a close up here. I do like seeing this, that's for sure. I mean, it is pretty low, like, it is low on the ground, but at the same time, it's cool. It's a cool color. I like it. There's bucks in here for sure. Why can't I find their antlers though? Gosh, that is the age-old question. You think I probably got like 1.5 miles on so far. I think I would have just stumbled across one by now. Oh well, keep plugging. So as I look at this rub, I just showed you guys this rub, like there's kind of an opening right in front of it, and then you see how like how the rub is a little bit lower on that branch, which I kind of pointed out. But then if you come over here a little bit as well, there's another opening kind of in this area. This could entirely be a buck bed. And if you listen to any of the podcasts, like hunting podcasts lately on whitetails, you'll hear the hunting beast talk about buck beds and hunting buck bedding area. And the whole premise behind it is like, if you want to hunt big bucks, hunt where they sleep. Like they sleep there, then they get up and then they move. So if you can get close to that sleeping area, your odds of finding them are a lot greater. That's the general premise of it. It's just the hardest part is finding the buck beds. And the reason they bed in these areas is because they're great defensive and safe spots, and they can kind of understand where hunters are coming from and all that. So they're hard to hunt because they're built to elude hunters. I mean, that's the whole point of them. So so if you're having trouble finding them, you're looking for, bucks really like to back themselves up to some sort of brush or some sort of area, and then they'll rub that area to kind of signify that it's theirs, or at least put their scent on it. And then this is, like I said, this is another one. And then they'll use this area where they back up. Their back will always be at that brush, and the wind will be coming from behind them so they can smell anything sneaking up on them. And then in front of them, it's usually a nice opening, kind of like this right here, a nice big opening here. And they'll use that for sight, so they can see anything coming at them, and they can smell anything coming from behind them, and that's what makes it a safe spot. So what you need to do is find an area that is out of their line of sight that you can go hunt, and because they're always going to smell you, but they're not always going to see you. So you got to find that area where it's out of their line of sight that you can set up as close as you can get, 80, 90, 100 yards, and then hope that they come your way when they get up in the evening to go feed. And I know a lot of people say, well, bucks always travel into the wind, so you're just kind of screwed. And that is 100% not the case. I had plenty of bucks. All the bucks that I saw this year, and not all of them, but I should say like 70, 80% of them came to me with the wind in my favor, not in theirs, in my favor. So they do travel with the wind sometimes. It's just kind of, to me, like deer, the bucks get up and they kind of go where they want to go. If they want to go to this field to eat, or they want to go to this bedding area to look for does, like they're going to go regardless of the wind. It's just how they approach that bedding area. You'll always see them come on the downwind side so they can sniff up into that bedding area. And if you can get in between, not in between, but like you got the bedding area, then you got the buck travel route, and then you got you right on the other side of that, so the wind is still in your favor. Like that is a premium spot, and I had that happen a few times this year and worked out great. Well, that is it for me today. If you enjoyed this video, if you got some value out of it, got some information, some entertainment, whatever it is, if you would, give me a thumbs up and also subscribe. Really appreciate it. Just trying to grow the channel and bring you guys educational information that's also somewhat entertaining. I know today may not have been that entertaining, but at the same time, it's just a scouting mission and trying to understand, you know, how deer are using a property and how I can be successful on this piece in the fall, even with hunter pressure. So hope it helps, guys, and again, thanks for watching. Catch you later.